And outside the box reviews, Giant Monster Mania, we are taking a look at the Kyoto Revoltech SciFi Daimajin figure. Now if you're taking a look at this and thinking, what the hell is Daimajin? It's a somewhat lesser known kaiju series from Daiei, the same company that brought us Gamera. It's a trilogy of giant monster films that all came out in 1966, and I believe Daimajin literally translates to giant demon god. Now unlike Godzilla or Gamera, Daimajin is actually on the smaller side, only 25 meters tall or roughly 82 feet. But all the Daimajin films take place in feudal Japan, so with nothing but swords and very early guns to defend themselves, Daimajin manages to do plenty of damage at that size. And if you are a fan of Godzilla or Gamera movies, track down Daimajin. You can buy all three movies on Blu-ray pretty cheap, and despite coming out in the 60s, the quality of the filming looks like it could have been done in the 80s or 90s. So enough talking about the movies, let's look at the figure. As with most Revoltechs, we get the nameplate here, so I assume that says Daimajin. It says Daimajin again, 1966. This is technically based off the first film, I guess, but really works for any of the movies with some minor differences. The nameplate is a triangular shaped piece of plastic that's hollow in the back. We get the standard little Revoltech accessory box, and your Revoltech coin. Insert witty comment about these not being worth anything here. Also, unique to Daimajin, we get a display base. I've never seen at least a plain display base like this with any of the other Revoltech figures, and bases in general seem to be few and far between the line. It's a simple black disc, single peg hole, kind of indented here at the bottom. Simple, but an effective little base. As you saw at the beginning of the video, we have Daimajin here in his stone statue form. Really nice looking helmet on there, very well sculpted, looking like a traditional Japanese helmet. It has a great stone looking paint job. It's kind of a brownish gray with different layers of brown on top of it to really bring out that stone effect. And we have the very stoic stone face, which is a very, very nice touch on this figure. We even have the nail that's driven into the head of Daimajin in the first film. Antagonists of the film are trying to break the statue, so they start to try to break Daimajin apart by ramming that nail into his head. But not long after, Daimajin comes to life, so to represent that, we can remove this face. Best way to do so seems to be to remove the head in its entirety, because the face, instead of popping forward, actually slides out the bottom, and it's actually pretty tricky to do. The face slides off, you can see the holes there at the top where it pegs in, and we can switch over to his living or awakened face, which is nice green. You can see the black detailing on his eyebrows and mouth there. His one eye is a little off to the side, but not horribly so. I think the detailing on here is pretty good. I think the movie it looked a little darker, so maybe a little extra black shading would have gone a long way with this face, but still not a bad effort. We have the spike, and we can actually remove that piece. It's a pretty long little spike there, and it just leaves the hole at the top of the head that he had in the movie once he removed the spike. Going down the rest of the body, we continue that great stone look on the armor here. Very nicely detailed. I love the detail on the belt. He has his little shoulder plates here, which do tend to fall off because they're hinged to allow more articulation, but they're really not so bad to get back on. Great detailing here in the back. You see all the little rivets sculpted in. He has his soft rubberized skirt down here at the bottom, but it still looks like it's a stone piece. Coming down the arms, we have the fabric effect going on here, which is very odd to see done in stone. And then the wrists and hands are the pieces I like the least in theory. I don't like that they went with this green ball for the wrist. I kind of wish they would have kept it that stone color. Even though these are separate pieces, I kind of feel like it would have looked a little better not to have that bright green ball in there. But we do get several different interchangeable hands. We do have a pair of fisted hands, which are the nice green there, matching the face. We get a gripping, grabby hand for either side, once again in the green plastic. Some good detailing here. You can't really see fingernails or anything on it, but for the size of it, it's not bad at all. For the right side, we get a tighter gripping hand used to hold his weapon. And on the left, we have a gripping hand with a built-in dude. I think this is the big bad from the end of the film. He's really nicely detailed. You can make out the detailing on his face, his mustache and eyebrows, his hair. Clothing's all sculpted in there and well painted and detailed. A very nice piece. So these are the only hands that aren't an exact pair, but a gripping hand holding a guy works out pretty well. Down here on Daimajin's belt, he has his sword, so you can see the sheath with the sword hilt coming out of it. This is actually removable as well. So we'll slide off the little Revoltech joint there. We could slide on its replacement, and this is to represent the sword out of the sheath. There's nothing there in the top. And then we get a really nice blade here. Same hilt we had in the sheath version, but a really cool kind of brassy copper look for the blade. Really, really like how this came out. And that is, of course, whatever the other gripping hand is meant to hold. Daimajin's legs are really hard to see because of the skirt, but we can see the bottom of him, still nicely sculpted and painted. We have his shins down there, and his big blocky stone feet. For articulation, Daimajin is pretty loaded. His head is on a Revoltech joint, so we'll go forward and back, not a ton, and it does feel a little loose, though that might be from me taking it on and off so often to replace the head, so it is a little wobbly, but still works pretty well. You can also go left and right with it, as well as tilt. You have Revoltech joints at the shoulders, so they will go pretty far out to the side, and then forward and back. As I mentioned before, there are little Revoltech joints on these shoulder pieces, so you can actually tilt them and move them to cover up any gaps. Revoltech joint at the elbow, giving a pretty good range of motion there, as well as allowing you to rotate the forearm if you want. We have the Revoltech joint at the wrist, so you can hinge at whatever angle you want it to, as well as swivel at the hand. And the only problem with these is every time I pull them out to switch out a hand, the joint comes with the hand as opposed to staying in the arm, so it's a bit of a production to switch out the peg each time. Here at the waist, you get another Revoltech joint, but you don't get a whole lot of motion with the way this is sculpted, so you really can't go much forward and back, but you can rotate. Same with the hips. Revoltech joints, you could theoretically go forward and back and out to the side with them. Out to the side kind of works a little better, but forward and back is really hindered by the skirt, but the articulation is there. Get a pretty good joint there at the knee. You can rotate at the top of the shin, and a Revoltech joint at the foot, so we'll go forward and back as well as pivot and swivel, which is pretty nice. For a size comparison, here's Daimajin next to the Monster Arts Gamera and the Monster Arts Godzilla 64. I use the 64 Godzilla for all these comparisons with Revoltech because he is the shortest of the bunch and fits roughly the time period where Daimajin and this Godzilla suit were both being seen in cinemas. And you can see Daimajin is a lot shorter than his fellow Dai brother of Gamera and really doesn't fit in scale with either of these, being that he would be much shorter. But if you want to have him fighting against Godzilla here, it would probably work alright. And here he is with the Revoltech Anguirus, and these guys aren't bad in scale with each other, with Anguirus kind of rearing up, and the Bandai Vinyl King Caesar figure, mostly because they kind of have similar stories within their movies. I have to admit, I think Daimajin here may be one of the better Revoltech figures I own. And maybe it's easier to give him a pass on certain aspects because I don't expect him to be in scale with anything else, even the other kaiju from Revoltech. And the articulation he's lacking, I can't imagine any other company being able to pull it off in a way where he'd be super articulated, because that skirt is awkward to do in plastic. So maybe I'm giving this figure more gimmies than I really should, but I enjoy the hell out of it. I think it's worth tracking down for any fan of Japanese special effects films. And even if you're not super into the Godzilla stuff, in a way, Daimajin actually plays out like a slasher movie. You watch characters get set up, and then the last 20 minutes or so is usually Daimajin just killing everybody. So do yourself a favor, pick up the Daimajin trilogy on Blu-ray, and then pick up this figure. It's one of these few Revoltech figures that still goes for a pretty decent price, I think mostly because of the obscurity of the character. But it's a character that I think definitely deserves to be less obscure. Make sure you check me out on Instagram, username Outside the Box Reviews. Also follow me on Facebook, link below. And until next time, this has been your Outside the Box Reviews, Giant Monster Mania. Stay tuned for more to come.